Hello, one of y'all. Welcome to Top Deck Thoughts, where we give our 2 cents on stuff in Magic the Gathering. For today, we're actually going through the second day of spoilers for Ikoria. There's a lot of cards. I'm also doing this live at the moment, so I'm going to get interaction with the people who are watching this live and such, so I just hope that would help give people kind of like interaction and just have fun with kind of like giving our 2 cents on the cards. Nevertheless, let's get started. The first card we're going to talk about is technically, well, we're going to first show the promo of it, Biolente Plant Beast form, which is also known as Neotal Pets of Death. So let's get a close zoom on the card. It's a doozy. It is 5 cost Absen, so 2 generic Absen. Absen does look really promising, I will admit to that one, Ramza. Anyway, it is a legendary creature, Cat Nightmare Beast. Wow, with these Apexes, they are just going crazy, kind of like with the creature types. Anyway, it also has the mutate of 4 hybrid of green-white and 2 black-black for Death Touch Lifelink. And it has, whenever this creature mutates, return any number of target creature cards with total power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Whew, I'm going to be honest, this is the card that I was like, yeah, I'm grateful I got my Leyline of the Voids in, because, yeah, Absent is going to be doing some graveyard shenanigans, and this card is going to help out a lot with that. Because the factor is, you could still just cast this for its regular, just being a 5-up Death Touch Lifelink, which is fine. It's not, like, amazing for that cost, but it's still really good. But if we can do shenanigans with Mutate, then this card gets a little scary. Yeah, Rams actually makes a good point. This with, pretty much Bolas's Citadel is going to be a little bit nutty. I could definitely see the potential shenanigans on that one. But yeah, as well as with that, I could also just see, if you have like a good self-milling Absent strategy, or just self-mill in general, just being able to bring a bunch of very powerful creatures just from the graveyard onto the battlefield and activate all those ETBs. I can even also see this in Absent Aristocrats as a potential possibility, because there's a lot of good cheap cost creatures that you can add up with the total power 10 or less and just have a lot of ETP triggers. Like, one I could think of at the top of my mind, like, remember Gary is a power 2, so you can get Gary out. You can get, like, you can actually get a majority of the mono black devotion creatures that people love to play pretty much out from the graveyard using this card, and that can be nutty. You can get Gary, you can get Auraria, you can get almost all the cards like Garrott's Finlicker and such, and just put them all in, get a ridiculous amount of life gain and life loss for your opponent. It's just, yeah, pretty much what Ramza says. If you can fill your graveyard, you play the Citadel, mutate this, and then boom, you win. So yeah, I think Nephros Apexes of Death is definitely the card that's making everybody want to do Absent shenanigans, and I can see why, because it is a very, very powerful card. Like, I cannot wait to see the shenanigans. Now, these cards I already talked about yesterday, but if people want me to talk about them after we get done with what happened today, I'll probably just go through that one just real quick. Nevertheless, next we're going to talk about technically Audrius Armored Killer. Oh, and Ramza did put a good point with Apexes of Death. Corpse Knight shenanigans abound. Oh, Corpse Knight. You scare me a lot now with this card. Anyway, now we're going to go to Andrius Armored Killer, which is also technically Gem Razor, which is also another really, really good card. 4 mana for 4/4 Beast, which has Mutate of 3. 1 and 2 green for a reach trample. Not bad. But whenever this creature mutates, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. That is really good in this standard meta. Like, I don't know if many people are aware, but with the standard meta, we have a lot of enchantments and artifacts going around. We're thinking about the Fires of Inventions. We're thinking about the Witch's Oven and such. There's a lot of powerful enchantments that people would want to essentially destroy. Yeah, it's a really good added effect. Plus, this actually allows me to bring up a little thing that I think will be a nice little tech card for actually the mutate decks that go into green. This card actually then becomes a lot potentially better, but the card I'm thinking about is actually No Hide Ferrots. The expansion does look very fascinating. I will admit with you on that one, but take a look at No Hide Ferrots real quick. There we go. Let me zoom in real quick. Oh, okay. That's too much of a zoom. My bad. Hello, everybody. Anyway, No Hide Ferrots. Hexproof sits. You can't cast non-creature spells, which is like, eh. But then the thing is, it has hexproof and such, which is nice. And, oh, hey. Coincidentally to the pepperoni, all those mutate creatures are creature spells. So you can kind of get a roundabout of helping ways to interact with opponents' board states by just having No Hide Ferrots, which is going to have hexproof, which is going to protect itself, and then just Gem Razor, and then mutate it, and then make it really intimidating. A hexproof for each trample that, oh, by the way, destroys a really annoying artifact or enchantment. I do feel like the potential shenanigans of that is something to keep an eye out on your brewing possibilities. Definitely look at creatures that you don't mind, that are in past standard, that you will not mind mutating, because I do think if there's a really good incentive to do green mutation, it's because Gem Razor. Because Gem Razor is just really good tech card. May still stick in the sideboard still, but still Reach and Trample is nothing to sneeze at. Yeah. That is pretty true. Like, if you can mutate an Impervious Great Worm, that's actually pretty silly. So, yeah. It also is actually going to be interesting kind of to see how this works, the mutate, and what creatures will people try to mutate and such. Next up, we're going to talk about Classification 5 and 2 green for an enchantment or enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets plus 20/20. But when this enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. Oh. So, obviously, there is a reason why they wanted to make sure. Yeah, and bringing back to what we were talking about before, yeah, on Colossal Graveworm, making that 16/16 trample reach indestructible hexproof creature is pretty nutty. But, yeah, anyway, back to classification. I know many people are going to look at this cost and be like, 20/20, but it has to be tapped, so I can't really use this as a finisher and such. There are actually a few little tricks, and it's a really roundabout trick combo. The roundabout trick combo is what you do with this. You have to play Ilharg. Ilharg is a 5-cost legendary god from the War of the Spark, I believe. That is a pig god. Everybody calls it the bacon god, depending on who you ask. Anyway, what happens is it has a sneak attack effect that when it attacks, you can essentially bring in a creature from your hand onto the battlefield tap and attacking as well. So there's a card from Pharaoh's Beyond Death called Storm Herald, and essentially what that does is you can take any auras that are in your graveyard and attach it to creatures you control. So what you pretty much do is you pretty much try to get a bunch of auras in your graveyard. Of course, stuff maybe to give evasion like Trample or Flying 2, Classification as well. And then what you do is you attack with the Ilharg, put in Storm Herald, tapped and attacking, and then badoom, you get a really, really big, intimidating creature, not to mention the additional auras, and that's going to be finisher. I'm going to guarantee you there's going to be some people on the early access stream that are going to try to get this deck to work. So, yeah. I think it's for standard, like, in the practicalities of, like, competitive viability, I don't think so. I do think it's one of those, other than that really, really janky combo I just mentioned, this is really too slow, and this is kind of one of those cards where you are investing a lot of mana to get this to work. It makes it too slow, and then once you cast it, unless you cast this on a hexproof creature... And thanks for the host, Roms. I actually appreciate that. Anyway, unless you decide to attach this onto a hexproof creature or a creature with indestructible, it's going to die. Because nobody's going to leave this to live. So, I'm definitely going to have fun doing some jank brewing with this, but I do think the card is overall just kind of meh, in my first glance opinion. Who knows, maybe after the early access stream, maybe it's the best card ever, but I highly doubt it. So next up, we're actually going to talk about Godzilla Doom Inevitable, which is technically the promo of... Well, I have to scroll down here for a little bit. This is the one with cycling, right? to actually kind of one of my little favorite arts from the set because it's just a giant dinosaur turtle, which is hilarious. Yudala, Wandering Monster. It's 5 red for an 8/8 with trample and haste, so this is a pretty big creature and has a lot of fun abilities. But there's also something really cool about this card. It has cycling for 1 in a lead. Oh yeah, classification on double strike enemy, that can do some shenanigans. Yeah, doing this live is actually a lot more fun than I thought. Anyway, so pretty much it has cycling, which for those who don't know, just for clarification, cycling is 1 in a red. You discard this card, and then you draw another card. And then what this card has is the ability of whenever you cycle this card, shuffle it into your library from your graveyard. If you cycle a card named this specific card 4 or more times this game, then just put it onto the battlefield rather than on the graveyard instead. I'm just going to say this. This card is actually really, really good. I'm not kidding. I know some people are going to look at this and be like, wait, you're essentially, if you're doing this whole cycle mechanic, you're paying more mana than actually paying this out for free. Why is this card good? Because there's an archetype that they've been trying to encourage in Eldraine a lot, which is the draw 2 archetype specifically. You know, you draw your second card and such. And we have been in the red-blue, been given a lot of extra card draw spells coming from the set as we kind of go on through the spoilers. And this one is not bad when you think about it. Just essentially draw a couple cards, you just do this, and then essentially if you play like 2 to 3 of these, you can do this consistently. The other aspect of this card that I don't think people underestimate, like, besides draw 2, this also can do some shenanigans in red-black, I would say, because you play cards like, say, Murderous Rider, and then the problem with Murderous Rider, when it dies, it goes to the bottom of your library, or even stuff like with the Cauldron of Eternity. You can use Yudala, Wandering Monster. It's just a semi-way, kind of like how people use Fabled Passage and such, to shuffle your deck to try to get to the card a lot more quicker. So, I like Yudala, Wandering Monster kind of a lot, because it is one of those cards that people just have to realize it's kind of a potential threat. Like, it can enable draw 2 archetypes, and if you can do this, one thing that people seem to underestimate is that if you play like 2, I'd say you would at least play 2, probably going a little bit over with 3, especially once you go over this 4 requirement. That's just a card draw that gives you a 8/8 trample haste. That's really good. So yeah, I do think it has a little chance of seeing some competitive play in the decks that are going to be Cycle Matter style deck designs. Because, seriously, this card's absurd. It's an 8/8 trample haste, plus we have stuff like, if you play this in mono red, you can also... Actually, mono red is a really... Yeah, this actually might see some play in mono red. I can't believe I'm saying that, but it actually might, because it's a way to dig for their deck, and then just essentially draw more cards, and they have to find ways to do kind of like draw more cards, since Fires of Invention, or not Fires of Invention, since, well, Fires of Invention will be countered a little bit, as well as Light Up the Stage and such can be actually countered with a card that we're going to talk about later. So maybe having this as a semi-way to card draw engine in mono red, so then you can have just an alternate way to get the final 8 points of burn damage or final points of damage in. It's a food for thought. I'm going to admit that. That's actually a fun food for thought. So yeah, I like this card, and I also love the art. But yeah, if you notice that, before I continue on, if you notice if there's anything else I can improve while doing this review stream and such, just let me know through the comments and such. Like I said, this is a first run, so I hope you are enjoying it at the moment. But anyway, so we got through that. Now we're going to talk about Destroyer of Perfect Lifeform. Really good kaiju monster there. That's pretty much technically the Everquill Phoenix, so I'm going to have to scroll down for this one. There we go. Everquill Phoenix. It's a 4-mana 4/4 with flying, no haste, which is weird to not see on a Phoenix. You usually expect haste, but oh, what does this do? Anyway, it has Mutate for free and just 1 generic red, so you're spending 1 less red mana to do Mutate, but what do you get out of it? Well, whenever this creature mutates, create a red artifact token named Fetter with -1, sacrifice Fetter, return target Phoenix card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Okay, this is going to be a really fun brew around card. I do think this card is also not that bad. I mean, the ability of essentially... The way I look at it is this way. you can essentially, let's say you only have this as your only mutate creature. Let's say you have a decent creature you have on the battlefield, you mutate with the Evercrow Phoenix, you're just going to give it flying, which sometimes giving the creature flying, whether you make it a 4/4 flyer or whatever the original creature's toughness and power flying, that's good in itself. And then when the mutate happens, the fact that you get the feather token is very, very nice, because then what happens is essentially, let's say then your creature dies through a generic, board wipe. Let's just say that. Like, people play Shatter the Sky, your creature dies. Okay, then what happens is, what you can do is then just essentially use that feather token, tap one at the end of their turn, return Everqueer Phoenix, and then you can just keep going on. I really want to test this out in kind of like Jund Sacrifice decks, because I think it might actually see a place in there, just because the little sacrifice outlet that you can do with the feather token, but also just because there's some creatures that get really scary when you can actually add the factor that you can make it fly. Like, the ones I could think of, it's just like, there's some cards that people don't really play in Jund Sacrifice and such, but they do play sometimes, kind of like the giant that gets bigger with how many lands you control and such, and use it for basic land tutor. The fact that you could potentially get that flying is ridiculous. But I can also think of other applications where this could actually see some play. There's also, I think, the jankiest approach of this is going to be everybody's going to try to make it into the Phoenix tribal deck. Kind of like that self-milled dredge deck that people have been trying out, kind of like with Arc-like Phoenix, and also the Phoenix from Pharaohs Beyond Death. That's also an application for this card. True, the Phoenix is actually going to be pretty nifty with Mayhem Devil too, so that's kind of another reason why I think it might actually see some decent tech play potentially in Jund Sac, so it's definitely a food for thought. I do love the art. I do love the original art from Lai Sitolan here, but I also like the other variations. I do like the Destroya Perfect Lifeform art, and also the comic book art for this is just, wow. Daniel Wallen-Jarson has been doing really good art. I mean, seriously, that's one of the showcase art cards that is just gorgeous. But yeah, I do think the Phoenix might have a chance to see some play. It's definitely going to be a fun card to try in the Jund Sacrifice Shenanigans deck. Yeah, that's also another way to look at it. You can actually mutate this into a Cauldron Familiar, then sacrifice them both for a food token, get both back for 1 mana. That is actually a fun food for thought. Like, I still need to know kind of like how the mutate abilities work when you quote unquote, like, when a mutate creature dies, because I don't know if it still stays as one creature, or if it is going to be one of those where if that does happen, then they both become separate creatures. Still, the factor that you can just mutate it and make it a 4/4 flyer, and then which can be used as a chump blocker, which then you could just then sacrifice with the oven if you want to, or just sack and then just block and then do the sack. Yeah, that's a fun food for thought. I'm not gonna lie, that's, who knows, maybe this actually might see some play in Jund Sac. But still, I like this card. It might see some play. Next up, let's see. Card I talked about yesterday. Okay, this one I gotta go because of translation. Now, one thing you gotta keep in mind with Scryfall, and I like using Scryfall for this, when they have translational cards, they always kind of like to do either official translations or silly translations. I think this is one of the official ones. Breach the Barrier, 2 and a green for an instant. Exile, up to 3 target enchantments, and it has cycling 2, discard, draw a card. Yeah, Breach the Barrier. Oh, nice. So, yeah, essentially, what this card does is absurd. Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of cards in this meta that are specifically enchantments and such. We're talking about the gods, we're talking about kind of like the Boggles decks. You kind of see people doing kind of like Selesnya Boggles and such, and just Fires of Invention, a lot of control-based enchantments like Concrete Tribunal, Prison Realm, Blinding Light, or Binding Light. I always forget the name of that one, even though I played it a ton when the original Pharaoh set. But the factor that you can spend free mana just to exile 3 of them, and keyword is exile, it's not destroy, which is very significant. And it's also at instant speed, which makes this absurd. This kills the gods without a sweat. This will kill any problematic enchantments, and the fact that it's instant speed will make it so you can actually cast it pretty much during any time you think it would be most applicable. You can cast this at the end of the opponent's turn. Yeah, it's pretty much green Bane of God. That is pretty much the best way to put it, Ramza. It is pretty much the green Bane of God. And it's in green, which I kind of wish this was a white card, because we kind of need more powerful white cards. Well, actually, we did got a really good bear today, so I can't really say that much, but let's get going. I already talked about this card yesterday, but short summary, this card's nutty. Actually, Ramza, just to let you know, if you're going to go into the kind of like Absent deck design, you're playing this card, especially in the Absent Aristocrat decks. This is probably one of the more powerful cards they showed off. This is really, really good. Ooh, it's really good. But I talked about all my details on it yesterday, so in other words, good card. Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to give it a shot too in the early access and such. Anyway, next up is Migration Path, which also has some really good art from Gretskorg Rizaki. Forgive me if I butcher the artist's name. Anyway, it is a sorcery cycle spell for 2, but what do? Oh, you search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them into the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. So this is not Rampant Growth, but it's... I am really having a brain fart on the name of that spell. Yeah, it's pretty much really good land fetch, good basic land fetch, and it's... I am forgetting the name of it. It was in Cons. Free in the green, you search for 2 basic lands tapped. Something growth. Like Explosion of Growth, Growth Explosion, or some shtick like that. It's pretty much this spell, but it has Cycling on it, which actually makes it really, really good, actually. Just the factor that if you need to, you could use it for 2 mana if you, late in the game, don't need. That's the one benefit and power about Cycle cards that people who never play with Cycle don't really get, but the power of Cycle is that if you don't really need this spell, like you don't need the additional ramp because maybe you've got all your lands out or you already have enough mana for your overall game design plan, you can just spend the 2 mana, cycle this, and then try to get another card that actually helps you get your plan. Yeah, Circuitous Route is definitely a variation of that card, but there's also a card that was in... this is going to bug me, but let me actually search it. Khans of Tarkir, I think it was in. It could also have been in the Dragons of Tarkir, but let me check the card list. It's on the tip of my tongue. Circuitous Route is a Guilds of Ravnica variation of this card, but let me get it real quick. It was 4 mana. Okay, so we're going to go not Seek of the Horizons, though Seek of the Horizons was a fun card to play during that. Well, let's see. It's technically Circuitous Route, but there was another name, Explosion Growth or something like that was in the Cons block that does the same thing. But it has Cycling on it, and Cycling is a very powerful ability, so I think this card will see some play. Just the Cycling ability on it is really nice. I don't say this would see play in, say, the Gates deck per se, but in any deck that wants to do ramp, I think they're going to give it a shot. Though, granted, maybe Uro and Growth Spiral is too much, but granted, maybe this could be ramp in the deck that wants to try to play like the companion Hippo, Dinosaur Hippo thing. So, that's a possibility, actually, more that I think about it. Also, one thing to keep in mind for people who are playing with that Dinosaur Hippo, you can't play Hydra Krasis in your deck if you want to meet the companion requirement, so, yeah, food for thought there. I just thought about that yesterday. I was like, oh. Huh. Uh-oh. Anyway, now we're going to talk about a shark. We're going to talk about the Voracious Great Shark. A 5-mana 5/4 with Flash that has the ability, when it enters the battlefield, counter target artifact or creature spell. So, this is just essentially a card for like Simic Flash, essentially, or any deck, maybe even Mono Blue shenanigans that wants to have this instant speed counter that still gives a really decent body. And that's kind of pretty much the basic purpose. We all seen kind of like these... pretty much Miss Coil Snake. We've seen this effect before. We know what it does. It's mostly there to help counter something that they think will be problematic with their design, and then you get a 5/4 out of it, which still a 5/4 can even be nice just to use as a chump blocker. So yeah, don't really underestimate this card. It is a really scary shark. Anyway, so sorry, I gotta have to check what that was just to make sure it wasn't family saying stuff. And also, it is a shark. And I don't know if they have it in Scryfall yet, but we also got Sharknado, which is amazing. But we'll get to that card once we get to that card. Next up, we got Dire Tactics. A really absurd spell. White and a black for an instant. Exile target creature. If you don't control a human, you lose life equal to the creature's toughness. Just by the way, Black, White, and Absent in general is kind of like the humans deck, or even Mardu with Commander, it's a humans deck. So there's a very, very good chance you're going to have a human. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. But I think the spell can also see play in kind of like Hero Precinct 1 style deck designs, because, hey, you're going to have that human, you're going to get a human token and such. It's just, this is a 2-mana instant, kill, and even not even kill, it's exile, so you can exile gods with this, you can exile really annoying cards that you want to get rid of. This card's powerful, and there's even some circumstances where if you don't have a human, you will not mind having to lose life to pay this cost, because if it essentially helps you get in the final points of damage to win a game and such, you don't mind that. So it's a versatile card. You're definitely going to have some humans in your deck if you are really concerned about the life loss shenanigans, but good card. Really good tech card. It will probably see some play. Next up, I think this is one of the more sillier cards, but it is, and the joke name they gave to this one is Big Boy Forest Crutcher. 5 mana, 2 in Gruul for a creature dinosaur beast, which is a sit-sits with Trample. And it has, whenever one or more creatures you control with Trample deals combat damage to a player, create an X green dinosaur beast creature token with Trample, where X is the damage that those creatures dealt to the player. So, for clarification, as I'm aware, pretty much what this card does is it calculates the total damage that's dealt to the player once the combat ends, or pretty much the damage phase resolves, and then it's going to create the token. So it's not like if you do like individual 1 points of little damage, you're going to get like 2 little 1/1 tokens. No, it's going to add all those up, and then it will make the token based on how much damage has been dealt. Still, with that being the case, this card is really nutty, especially in actually multiple formats. Like, I'm thinking about this for Commander, like in the decks that like to have cards that duplicate tokens, like Doubling Season and stuff like that. It's a gross card. And then there's just a lot of good trample cards currently in the meta. There's stuff like Questing Beasts and such. There's also just cards that we're seeing in this set that are just trample. Oh, and by the way, there are also ways that we can give creatures that are just big trample through stuff like Shadow Spear. I mean, I think this is probably the one card that might actually make Shadow Spear a main board state card, because the fact that you can make any of your creatures get the trample, and then once you have this creature out and then be able to make the tokens, that can be silly really quick. I'm definitely going to say that this is going to probably give some Gruul aggro shenanigans a run for their money, because they are going to have fun with this card. There's not really that much to talk about it. It's just kind of like a good Stompy Boy, and good Stompy Boys is what the Gruul players want. Now you're getting it, Ramza. Now you're getting it. But hey, let's get back for more, shall we? And that's the name of the card. It's a 6-mana instant spell, so a lot, but what it does is pretty cool. Return target creature card from your graveyard, so it has to be your graveyard, to the battlefield. When you do, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So this is pretty much a 6-mana reanimate that also is a fight spell, which I think in Limited is going to be pretty good. I don't know about Constructed. I do think that's a little high cost. There is the consideration that maybe in the Absent Graveyard Matters deck that this might see play, but I do think the high cost for Standard is a little bit much, but it's still a really nice spell. Like, I could definitely see this seeing Brawl play, Commander play in the decks that would want this type of spell. It's definitely cool, but I do have to admit, this whole set is kind of like giving me a cons vibe, which is actually kind of what's making me more excited about it. Seeing all this kind of like wedge spells and also kind of like multicolor spells and such. It's definitely giving off that vibe, so it's making me happy. But this one's pretty simple. You're definitely going to play this in limited and constructed. If you don't get too greedy with this. Maybe just have this as like a 1 or 2 of in your deck. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. Absent is definitely looking like to be a fun deck archetype. Anyway, now the next card we're going to talk about is the Valiant Rescuer. Speaking of humans, it's a 1 and a white for a free 1 human soldier. So it's your typical piker. But what does it do? Whenever you cycle another card for the first time each turn, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Oh, and by the way, it also has cycling for 2. Honestly, pretty decent limited card if I say so myself. There is the consideration for this in constructed. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it is tempting. I'm not gonna lie that. I mean, the fact that this is a consistent token generator if you do the cycle deck shenanigans. I don't know if the draw 2 deck, kind of like that was generated from Eldraine, would go into a Jeskai route, but this card does give an incentive to do the draw 2 shenanigans because you have a lot of token generators, like with Improbable Alliance, this, pretty much maybe even you try Hero Priest and 1 in that deck. You just have the extra draw 2 spells. And there's just some cute shenanigans you can do with this. Like, there's even still Divine Visitation in the meta, so this is a fun card. Exactly. Yeah, this as well as Hero Priest and 1 could actually make a really, really, really good kind of like token generation kind of like archetype. It's definitely going to be fascinating to see if this sees play. I definitely do think it's going to be a limited art star. Like, it's not a bomb and draft, but if you're already in white and you see this past you are going to pick this up without a sweat. Because it's just a decent piker that has upside. When you don't need the creature, you just draw the card. Next up, oh, I love this cycle. I want to see the rest of the cycle, but it's what they call the Mythos cycle. So as we all seen, there is those pretty much con color kind of like Apex Legends and such, and they're all going to get a monocolor in quotation marks, Mythos. But here's how the card works. Essentially, Mythos of a Drunk. 2 red and a red for a sorcery spell, and then the Mythos deals 5 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers. If blue and white, so with the 2 generic mana here, if blue-white was spent to cast this spell until your next turn, those permanents can't attack or block, and their activated abilities can't be activated. This card is actually really, really good. Like, really good. Now, obviously, you have to be in the Jeskai deck to actually get the full advantage of this, but still, 4 mana for a Cone of Flames that's for 5 damage, that's not bad. That's actually pretty decent. And also, yeah, granted, it only can target creature and planeswalker, so it's not going to be a giant burn damage to the face, but there are shenanigans with this card. Like, the factor is, the theme that I think most people are going to take for granted at first glance is, why is there, say, activated abilities and such, and not activated abilities of creatures? Well, for those who don't know, Planeswalker abilities are activated abilities. So you can, if you meet the cost of the blue-white spending, you can essentially use this to, if you can't, like, on-white remove a Planeswalker, you can use it to shut it off for a turn. And that can be back-breaking for some deck designs. So, yeah, I like this card a lot. I love the Seb McKinnon art. Seb McKinnon is one of my favorite artists, and seeing him doing this cycle, it's just, yes. So yeah, love this card. I do think Jeskai Fires are definitely going to give this card a shot, or any deck that does the Jeskai shenanigans. This is a good incentive to go Jeskai. I'm just going to say that right off the bat, because this spell is pretty powerful. Like, not like backbreaking powerful, but it is a really good tempo spell. I'll say that right off the bat. Exactly. Like, against Nissa, sure, you still have the stack ability, which is obnoxious, but the fact that they can't make their creatures into lands when that happens, pretty good. Also, one of the more interesting board wipe spells we've seen in a while, which they call Odd the Evens, which that's not the official translation. It's like Matt's Extinction, I think is the official translation or some shit like that. It's 3 and a black for its sorcery spell. Choose odd or even. Exile each creature with converted mana cost of the chosen parity. And you gotta remember, 0 is even. So, this is a really, really interesting board wipe for black. I think this is going to be one of those cards that is potentially, you definitely have to be observant of how your meta resolves, because I do think this has a chance to at least see sideboard play, maybe even some main deck play, because this is a really splashable board wipe. Like, if you're playing a splash of black, you can still play this in your sideboard, and it's still a very powerful effect. Like, it's an adaptable board wipe that you can accommodate your deck design to accommodate for. Like, you notice that once the opponent has a board state, they have, let's say, a bunch of even cost creatures. You can just cast this, say, even, and then hopefully you don't have that many even cost creatures, exiles everything, poof, and then you still have a board state. Now, one thing to keep in mind, tokens are considered 0 cost, so if you want to try to destroy a lot of tokens, you do have to choose even to do this effect, so keep that in mind. Other than that, I like the card. It is modifiable. Mantra spells always have a chance to see constructed play depending on the meta, so keep an eye on this. It might actually see some play. Next up, this card annoys me. They call it the Trump Shard, but I'm just annoyed at this spell. It's 2 and a green for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, reveal a creature card from your hand. This card deals damage equal to the revealed card's power to target creature or planeswalker. For limited, this is actually pretty good. I mean, the fact is, we are going to play with a lot of big creatures and such, and being able to essentially, a majority of deck designs are going to be very heavy creature oriented in draft, so the fact that you can use this as a conditional kill spell to destroy a very problematic creature or planeswalker, very nice. And the fact that it deals damage, very nice. Why does this frustrate me? Because I do think this is a card that Simic Ramp might give a shot at. Because there is some really big creatures within Simic Ramp. And remember, it deals damage equal to the revealed card's power to target creature or planeswalker. So, a lot of Simic Ramp decks play Uro. This is essentially, if you don't need to cast Uro on your turn, you can just cast this spell, reveal Uro, and be like, boof. That and Impervious Great Worm plus True Fire Captain, that is actually a pretty janky combo, I'm gonna admit that. Yeah, that is a really janky combo. Oh boy, I gotta try that on the early access stream if I get the chance. Yeah, that is actually a really janky combo, so yeah, very conditional, but a fun card. It's definitely going to be a fun card to see. Next up, we get the Skull Prophet. Green and a black for a free one, so a piker again, which makes all those deal 1 damage to each creature spells a lot more significant when you think about it. Wink, wink, not. But anyway, it's a human druid that's a mana dork for either green or black, or you can tap it to put the top 2 cards of your library specifically, into your graveyard. Card's pretty good. Now, I do think that there are cards that are better than this currently in Standard. Like, we have I'm having a brain fart, but it's the one that already mills your graveyard and you return a land card from your graveyard to the top of your library. I do think like that's going to be the more better, quote-unquote, semi-ramp that the mill deck wants. But the fact that this can consistently mill you if you need to, pretty powerful. Especially since Absent is looking like the graveyard deck, and they will not mind milling their graveyard with this card if they don't need the mana. I'll say that right off the bat. So, pretty easy. It's a good card. I definitely think the Absent deck will give it a shot. Next up, okay, hey, modern human players, take a look. General Kudru of Adrenev, 1 and Orzhov for a legendary creature human soldier. It's a free, but other humans you control get +1/+1, and then whenever this card or another human enters the battlefield under your control, exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. So, a card that helps us with graveyard shenanigans. I don't mind that. Oh, and then you can spend 2 mana and sacrifice 2 humans, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. This card is legit gas. let me explain why. Because as we were talking about originally with early in the stream, there is a lot of incentive to do human-based shenanigans. Like we have stuff like the Hero Priest in 1. You can just Hero Priest in 1 on turn 2, play this on turn 3, get the human token, and then just kind of like go off with more multi-color spells. Like I said, Orzhov is definitely going to be kind of like the humans, kind of like tribal deck from what we've been seeing. And oh boy, is this an incentive to do the humans tribal thing. Yeah, Orzhov Hero can actually legit be a thing. And the fact that this has the activated ability of just 2 mana and sacrifice to destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, that's pretty cool. I'm almost tempted to say that maybe Mardu humans can be a thing, because then the one non-human card they could play is like Mayhem Devil, and then do sack shenanigans like that. But that's more like a janky off-brew. Sorry, I just like Mardu a lot. That's kind of like one of my favorite kind of like cons from the cons block. But that's my personal thing. But yeah, I am really curious to see if modern humans play this, but it's definitely going to be a good sideboard card for humans. I'm going to say that a lot, since Modern does have a lot of graveyard interaction spells, so yeah, this card is legit gas. It's pretty much a 5 out of 5 star card. You'll see play in Standard. It's definitely going to see sideboard play in Modern. And if you're wanting to do human tribal and you want a Lord, here you go. This card's silly. Mardu Love. I appreciate that, brother. Mardu Brothers for life. Anyway, cheesiness aside, we talked about this card already, so let's talk about the Dream Terror Heron. 4 and a blue for an elemental bird. That's a free 4 with flying. That also has mutate for free in the blue, so you can mutate this on a creature for free in the blue. Whenever this creature mutates, draw a card. Really good limited card. I'm going to say that right off the bat. Just a 5 mana free 4 flying. You would play that in limited, no sweat, and the fact that you can mutate this for 4 mana, really nice. And the fact that with the 4 mana, you get kind of like a Mold Drifter light effect of drawing a card, and then every time you mutate the specific creature, you will draw a card. Very nice. Limited All-Star. I don't know about Standard. I do think there's a lot more better mutate creatures, but I could see some people wanting to give this a shot at the very least. But it's definitely going to be a fun budget option for people who are starting to set out and they need to look at really good commons if they have stuff they need. So, yeah, I like this card for Limited. Has some potential fringe budget applications for Standard. Yeah, Teamer with this card and Niv Mizzet could actually be a pretty fun janky combo. A well point there, Lanza. Really good well point there. Anyway, next up we get to a reprint, and a reprint I love, Fertilid. Yes, 2 and a green for a 0/0. Wait, 0/0. However, it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters, and then has 1 in the green, remove a +1/+1 counter from Fertilid. Target player searches their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle their library. Now, this is more a fun commander card, because you can do the politics of being like, hey, I can let you search for a land if you help me later with some stuff and such, like a great commander politics card. But in Standard, I do think it has some chance, because the factor is Proliferate is still a mechanic in Standard, and the fact that you could use this as just a semi-cheap way to be able to ramp, especially with cards that do need to get lands on pretty quick, such as like Fires of Invention type deck lists and such. I've been debating about trying to make a mid-range Fires of Invention Fires of Invention mid-range deck list that pretty much run stuff like the new Vivian and such, so this will go in because it will allow you to get those extra lands you need. I like it a lot. It's more like a janky Fiend in Standard, but it's fun to have this reprint to keep it cheap for the people in Commander who need it, because it is a fun politics card and also a good ramp card in Commander. Next up, we get the Chittering Harvester. They are definitely doing good with the Nightmare art in this set. It is 6 mana for 4 sits, but it has mutate for 4 and a black, so you can mutate this on a creature for 5 mana. And then whenever this creature mutates, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So this is a graveyard pack that is essentially, instead of when a creature dies, it's whenever you mutate this creature. this card has a really, really slim chance of actually giving this a shot. Because, yeah, any sap deck that's in the current standard is going to give this a shot. At least I would say as a one of in a deck or a two of, especially if you do have mutate based archetypes within your deck design. Because the fact that this could just be just a quick way to get a 4/6 power toughness boost to one of your creatures and then just have a edict effect. It's still a really expensive edict when you do the mutate. Don't underestimate that. But still, for commander also, it's really good because each opponent. So you can make your opponent sacrifice some very problematic creatures. So yeah, the wedge colors are definitely going to be having some fun shenanigans within this upcoming standard and such. I like this card for the limited, absolutely, because the factor is giving. Still, it's an edict effect, so you kind of have to keep that in mind. Edict effects are very tricky in standard. They're good sometimes, but the fact that the opponent will choose the less problematic creature they don't mind edicting if they have the choice. Still, though, depending on how cheap mutate can be, and if we have ways to discount mutate, this card might actually do see some potential standard play. Definitely fringe standard play. I'll say that right off the bat. Next up, we got the Insatiable Hemorrhage. Free and a black for a creature nightmare. Yet again, more creature nightmare art. For a free with Death Touch and has mutate for 2 and a black. And it's whenever this creature mutates, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. So, if you really want an incentive to do some funny mutate shenanigans, here you go. This could be a fun kind of like alternate win condition and such, like if you have a lot of cheap mutate spells and such, and then just essentially keep on mutating, and then just getting a little drain, do the first drain, then do the second drain, and then do the third drain. Like, it's little incremental life drain, but it can get silly pretty quick. I don't think this card is amazing because you are kind of relying on a Voltron-y design with this one. I've never been really a fan of these cards that you have to mutate X times to get a really powerful effect. Mostly because once people kind of realize you're trying to do this deck strategy, they are going to remove this card. Sure, they are, due to the fact of how technically mutate works, you are going to still get the free creature and that little effect first. But it's better to have the effect only happen once than the effect happening 10 times, so to speak. So, yeah, I don't think so, but I could be wrong. But it is a fun food for thought for at least Janky Brews. Next up, we got the Cavern Whisperer. A common, 4 and a black for a nightmare, 4/4. You can also mutate it for free and a black. And it has menace, so you can pretty much use this to give menace to something, which is nice. And whenever this creature mutates, each opponent discards a card. No. Here's the thing. With most discard spells, you really want the discard spell to be really, really cheap. You want it to be like 2 mana, or even like 3 mana if you're using Davriel and such. 4 mana for this effect is, yes, it is one of those effects that can, quote-unquote, implement itself each time you mutate, which could be backbreaking. I don't know. I think this card is kind of too slow with the current standard. I think there are a lot more better discard spells currently in standard. It's a fun food for thought and a good budget option if you need one for a mutate deck for commander or standard and such, but I mean, I guess you technically do still get the menace out of it, and getting the menace out of it and on a really big creature could be relevant. Maybe. But nah, I'm not really that impressed with this card. I think it's a fun card, but I don't think it's like a good card. Decent for limited though, like for sealed specifically. But for draft, you probably should skip this. Probably. True, the mutate abilities do stack, so that is something to definitely consider, Ron, so I will admit. Now time for one of the most pushed mythics of the set. Fiend Artisan. 2 Gagari for a creature nightmare. It's a 1/1, but it's not going to be a 1/1 that much because Fiend Artisan gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard. Okay, Now, keep one thing to keep in mind: it does say your graveyard, so it doesn't say all graveyards. So no, this is not like the lure grade that everybody's been hyping about. However, this still can get pretty big pretty quick since we have a lot of ways to mill, so you got to keep that in mind. Oh, and by the way, it also has an activated ability of Ets and Gargari to sacrifice another creature, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost Ets or less, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. Yeah, this card is legit scary. I don't think I this card is pretty much one of the things that if Absent is going to be a thing, it's going to be this card because the factor is it has the sack ability, which is nice. But even the thing that's scary about this card is it's actually applicable to multiple archetypes when you think about it, because it is hybrid mana. You can play this in mono black, and then you could just sacrifice one of your cats to tutor, I don't know, Gary, if you need to get a Gary. Or even in Jund Sack, you can eat a tutor and just, you want to get a Kolvard out? Here you go. Sacrifice one of your cheap fiends, go get Kolvard, and then there you go. Yeah, this card is legit nutty. Like, this is a card that is a legitimate threat, and the fact that we do have haste enablers in the meta, you gotta keep that in mind. Yeah, I think this is going to be one of those cards that's either going to be really, really good, or it's going to be really, really bad because it's so good that everybody's going to hate on the card if they can, or like bolt it or remove it the minute it gets on the field. Because that effect is legit scary. It's a amazing card. Probably going to see play in multiple formats. It's scary. Never underestimate cards that let you tutor for cards, especially for very, very what is relatively a cheap cost. Like the factor that this is just essentially saying, "Oh, hey, you just spend X mana and then just one little hybrid mana to go get any creature from your library." You don't even have to search your graveyard. It says search your library for a creature card. And also, due to the sacrifice, if you sacrifice a non-token creature, it makes itself bigger, and it's just like, yeah, the more I think about this card, the more I think it's more really, really nutty. There's probably a reason why this card is selling out from... It's kind of like, I always like to see the pre-order prices and stuff. I never really like pre-ordering cards and such singles until kind of like the second or third week out and such. But I can see why this is selling out, because it's a good card. It's absurd. There's just so many shenanigans that you can do with this card. It's going to see play in Commander. It's going to see play in Standard. I can see some people trying to do this in Modern, since this is the closest thing you're going to get to a Fiend Pool. Though I do think its power in Modern is a little bit reduced to the fact that we have a lot of early efficient game removal in that format. And that format is a very fast format at the current moment of its design. But Pioneer players are definitely going to give this a shot without a sweat as well. So, Sultai Delirium, anybody? Yeah, this card is good. I think I am like being a broken record player on that. So let's move on to another card that went from being very good to it's alright. Boon of the Witchkeeper. 6 mana for a sorcery spell, draw 4 cards. And it has cycling for 1. Discard this card, draw a card. For limited, this is a pretty good card, I would say, because you should never underestimate a draw 4 spell. Drawing 4 cards is a very powerful effect, especially in limited and such. In constructed, maybe, like, I am thinking like in Fires of Eviction decks might give this a shot, because at worst, if this is in your starting hand, you can still just cycle it to try to draw into your deck more to try to get to your Fires of Eviction, and then later game you can use this as a late game, draw a lot of cards and such. So that's the only application I could think of. Maybe in control lists as well. I'm not really that best of a control player, so maybe control players in the chat might be more giving on whether or not this card's really good or not, but I do think it's a little too high cost unless you're doing kind of like broken shenanigans like the Fires of Eviction deck list and such. And even then, I think there are better draw options currently in Standard. Don't get me wrong, I think the card's fine. I do think the card's good, but sorcery speed, draw 4 cards is a little costly, especially for 6 mana, so... Yeah, but still cycling on it is nice. I'm not going to underestimate that. I do think this card does have some commander viability, especially since we have that one cycle deck that's been being encouraged to do in the Jeskai colors. Next up, speaking of that hate bear, as I was mentioning before, Draneth Magistrate, which looks like that one guy that's always on the aura curses in the commanders. You know which ones I'm talking about. But anyway, what does this card do? It's a 1 white human wizard, it's a 1/3, and it has your opponents, plural, can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. This card is nutty. This card is a really good hate bear in multiple formats. Because here's the thing. There's a lot of decks currently in multiple formats that want to cast spells from any other place in their hand. Like Modern Dredge, they rather have spells that they cast from their graveyard. And Draneth Magistrate negates that. There's also in Standard Fires of Invention list that wants to cast his spells for free. Or no, not Fires of Invention. What am I thinking? Oh no, I'm thinking Light Up the Stage. There's like Mono Red that lights Light Up the Stage and all those red impulse draw effects. This gets negated by that. There's also stuff like, say, the ones I could think of is like even Golos with the free effect of trying to get your spells off for free. There's even the major that this is a really good counter and good tech card against Adventure, because technically speaking, they can still cast the Adventure portion of the spell, but then they can't cast the creature's portion of the spell, which is very significant since a majority of those deck designs run Edgewall Innkeeper, which then casting the creature portion of the spell is the primary card draw engine. Yeah, this card is going to negate a lot. Not to mention in Commander and Brawl, there's a lot of people that's been contemplating that this might actually be banned in those formats, due to the factor that this essentially does negate your commander. Your opponents can't cast their commanders when this is out on the battlefield. I will say probably not, because it's still a 2-mana 1/3. There are a lot of decks that can still deal with this, especially in Commander, with the format being slow enough. So I do think it's not going to see it banned, but oh boy, this is a really, really good tech card. I know some people have been kind of like making the suggestion of, well, why is this card not going to get banned, and then why does Sorcerer's Spyglass get banned, or some shtick like that? It's because it's an artifact, and an artifact can sometimes, depending on varying deck designs, be harder to remove depending on the color pie theory of Magic than it is to remove. Like, multiple colors have ways to remove a 2-mana 1/3. Sometimes colors don't have a way to deal with a 2-cost artifact. That's pretty much the nutshell of this one, but yeah. As Ramza pointed out, this one is a ridiculously big card. It is going to see a lot of play. You might want to get your foils as soon as you can, because it might spike. Next up, our confirmation that Narset's going to be in this set, and it's probably going to be the third Planeswalker. But still, let's take a look at the spell. Channeled Force. 2 blue and a red for a instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard X cards, and then target player draws X cards. Channel Force deals X damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. Yeah, this is a pretty good card. This one is really good. Now, I'm kind of having fun because one of the themes I saw was Chase, also known as Mana Curves, was actually, she plays the Locust God, and every Locust God commander player is looking at this card and being like, yes, 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 yes. And yeah, pretty much in Locust God, this is a really absurd instant spell. Because, yeah, for 4 mana, you can essentially just discard your entire hand, draw that many cards, and then deal up to X damage to a very problematic card. You can use this to take out some pretty powerful planeswalkers, because if you have a pretty good grip, you can deal sometimes up to 2 to 3 to 4 damage. However, if there's one weakness to this card, at least for standard, I would say, even though I do think it's a good standard card, potentially, we still have cards, ironically, Narset in the format that does kind of negate the card draw aspect of this card, which is kind of stinky. However, post-rotation, this card gets a lot more powerful, I would say. Still, besides that, this one is also just pretty good in the Draw 2 archetype. The Draw 2 archetype will probably want to give this a shot at the very least. Because still, being able to never underestimate a card that allows you to get a new grip, so to speak. Still, in Magic, the one cost that I will have to mention, you do have to accommodate your deck designs or a deck design to essentially have it where your hand is going to be consistently good enough that you don't mind discarding to do the redraw effect. Like, if you're a deck that empties out your hand pretty quick, then this card is kind of... But if you're a card like maybe a control deck of such sorts, maybe you give this card a shot, because it does technically help you discard lands you don't need to help draw into more gas, so... And it's instant speed, so you can do this at the end of the opponent's turn, so... It has a chance. It's definitely going to be a good commander card. Has some chance in Standard. Next up, we go to Passo Monstruoso, which is they call it the Monstrous Step, 5 mana for a sorcery spell, but it also has cycling for 2, so if you need to, you can just cycle this. And it has target creature gets +7/+7 until in a turn. Up to 1 target creature blocks this turn if able. So, what this pretty much does is... This one's a weird one, but here's how this works. Essentially, what you do is you cast this on a really big creature you don't mind attacking in, and then you use this to target a creature you want to remove from the opponent. So you target the opponent's creature, and they have to block if able. So if the opponent doesn't have any way to tap their creature down, they essentially are going to block that creature. So it's kind of a 5 mana post-to-be removal spell that can also work as a semi-lure effect to an extent. I think in Limited it's fine, especially in Sealed, but I do think in like Draft and also in Standard, I think it's a little bit slow. Some decks will definitely give it a shot, like I am kind of tempted to put this in the not Golos, but the Hydra Lord. What's his name? I'm having a brain fart on his name. The Hydra Lord dude, the one that whenever you target, you fight something. Gargros or some shit like that, if I remember correctly. I do kind of want to try it in that deck design, because I think that would be kind of cool. Besides that, though, if there's one really great thing about this card, it's that art. That art is actually legit. That is probably one of the better art renditions of a foot with the little gecko being like, Rrr! That I've seen. So, yeah, good limited card. Constructed, probably not so much. Maybe Fringe Commander play. Maybe, definitely for budget jank. Next up, we get the Mythos of Snapbats, which is 2 white and a white for a sorcery spell, with still more gorgeous Seth McKinnon art. Seth McKinnon's killing it again. Yay! Anyway, it is 2 white and a white. Each player chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control, then sacrifices the rest. If black and red was spent to cast a spell, you choose the permanents for each player instead. Yeah, you know how I mentioned earlier that I think Marduk's Sacrifice might be a thing? This card might actually be the way to make Marduk's Sacrifice a thing. Now, the spell is not amazing. Like, we have very familiar spells like this in the past of Magic, and they never really make that much impact. But we have a lot of sacrifice incentive cards in the meta and such. And this card, just pretty much, you can just choose your Bond of Mayhem, choose your other stuff. You don't mind sacrificing it, because in the Mayhem Devil, it's going to do the Peen triggers. So yeah, in Mardu Sacrifice, if you want to make Mardu Sacrifice a thing, it's definitely going to be helped out a lot with Mythos of Snapbats. Also, Marchesa Commander decks, or any Mardu Commander decks, are going to love this card as well. Just in Commander, this effect is a lot more powerful. So yeah, I like this card. Potential in Standard and Mardu Sacrifice, but besides that, probably not much else. It's probably only within that deck design. Though I do love the mantra ability of this Mythos cycle. Next up, we got the Wingfold Pteron. I think is how you pronounce that. Anyway, it has... Oh, that's a fun one. Sacker Fiend Leaf Taste on the board. Yeah, that is going to be nutty. Anyway, what was I thinking? Oh yeah, Wingfold Pteron. 5 and a blue for a 3/6 creature dinosaur. It's a common, and has the ability that when it enters the battlefield, with your choice of a flying counter or a hexproof counter. So it enters in the battlefield with it. It's not when it enters the battlefield this happens, so you can't negate the hexproof by doing a removal. That it will enter with hexproof on it. And it's a free set. Honestly, not a bad limited card. The fact that it does give it hexproof is very significant, since it does kind of help if you are doing the mutate shenanigans. This can be a way to mutate, and if you need to, a 6 mana free 6 flying is not great, but it's not bad. Like, it's definitely going to be one of those that I think this is going to be mostly used for the hexproof aspect of it to help with mutate rather than the actual flying aspect of this. For standard, though, I think it's too slow. 6 mana is a lot of mana to play this card. Maybe for budget brew builds, maybe for budget brew builds. But, yeah. We're looking for other stuff to give creatures hexproof besides this. Besides, speaking of limited fodder again, Sabertooth. 1 and a white for a kitty cat that has, it's a free one with flavor text. Pretty much everybody knows this. Vanilla flavor text cards, you play them as curve filler within draft or within sealed. I mean, someone might just put this in the all kitty tribal deck just for some laughs, but I do think there are better cats out there if you are even doing the cat tribal deck. I mean, heck, we have the whole Apex cycle of cats that you probably just want to do that if you want to do cat tribal and such. So, a lot better cats. This is more for limited, not much constructive viability whatsoever. Next up, Reconnaissance Mission. This card's nutty. Speaking of Niv Mizzet, 2 blue for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Well, I'm going to let you think on that one and see why this is really silly with Niv Mizzet. I'll give people a minute. Do 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 do. Yes, this is an infinite combo. So yeah, if you have a Reconnaissance Mission on here, what you do is you have Niv Mizzet out, you do the effect, and then once you cast like a cheap instant spell or such, or even cycle, then what happens is essentially then it's going to deal the Oh, wait, I have to read this again. Whenever this creature you control deals combat. Oh, never mind. This is not curiosity. Okay. Whew, okay, that was not. Okay, good thing I read that card wrong. So still, for Niv Mizzet, this is still a fun combo kind of like scenario. So still, I think this is more practical. Okay, well, besides the actually not infinite combo that I was thinking about here, never mind, not infinite combo. Okay, it's not an infinite combo. But still, if you're playing kind of like a tokens deck, that's still pretty good with this card. Like, because it says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player. So it stacks. So if you like play a go wide deck, every time your creature is going to deal a point of damage, you are going to get card draw off this, which is nice. And even at worst case, you can still use this to just cycle. So yeah, with Kaikar, the Jeskai Spirit bird thing, yeah, that's actually really good. It might actually be really good in Kaikar, actually, now that you mention it. Kaikar Commander, or even Kaikar Brawl. Actually, the Brawl decks, the old, kind of like, the old wedge colors from the core sets are actually getting a bit of a boost thanks to this set with potential Brawl playability and such, so that's kind of nice to see. So, yeah, like this card. Good thing I misread it, and it's not an infinite combo. Phew. But still, really good card. Probably has a chance to see some standard play, potentially, maybe. But yeah, good thing this isn't Curiosity, because if this was Curiosity, then it would have been absurd. Okay, next up, we're going to go to the Phase Dolphin, which is a Elemental Whale. Cool. 2 and a blue for 1/4. Whenever it attacks, another target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. Limited, this is a very good card. It's a very good card in Limited. Just because the factor is that we're in a set that's going to be a lot of big creatures and such. So the factor that this card is kind of works as a blue Pegasus Courser, more or less, essentially. And then you attack, with your other target attacking creature. It can't be blocked, so pretty much your biggest creature on the board is unblockable. That can close out games. So with that, that's pretty good. In Standard, this is a cute card to consider for Elemental Tribal. I'm going to say that, especially since Elementals can get pretty big pretty quick. But it is definitely like more of a budget option for that list than I would say like a mainstay. It's more like a 36 card or anything. You're mostly just doing it because of the elemental trigger with stuff like Risen Wreath, etc., etc., etc. Nevertheless, cool card. The art, though, is amazing. Like the details on the Dolphin pin and just the ways it does the patterns and such. Next up, we're going to talk about the Flourishing Bots. 1 white for a Bots, so hey, a Bots creature. Yee! And it is a 1/1, but whenever you cycle another card, put a +1/+1 counter on Flourishing Bots, and also can cycle itself. Okay, this is a decent card. It is going to be interesting to see if people try to do a challenge of how big they can make this Bots, because, yeah, the factor is we do have a lot of cycle spells currently in the meta, but I feel like the cost of... I feel like this is kind of one of those weird cards where I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's great. And the reason why I don't think it's great is this. A majority of spells where... The reason why cycling is really, really good is mostly because it gives a second versatility of a spell when you don't need it. And I feel like a majority of the time when you're using the cycling aspect of the spell, it's more later down the line in the game. There's maybe sometimes where you're going to sacrifice a spell on turn 2, turn 3, or such, but you still have to cast spells and such. And I feel like what many people are going to try to do is they're going to play this on turn 1, they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to cycle a lot of spells and make this ridiculously big. But I think that's not the best approach here. I still think it's a decent limited card. Like, if you need a curve villa, it's a good curve villa, and you have a few little cycle spells here and there. It does get a little bit bigger, which then can make it bigger and such, but it doesn't have any evasion whatsoever. I think if there's one favorite thing I like about this card is both the little art because of the little foxes in the bin there and such, and also the flavor text. Day 1. These Fox pups have really taken to me. Day 4. Big. So big. Need additional security. Jonna, Mission Naturalist, Research Notes. Seriously, the pattern we see in the art, the really, really big Fox, it's just like... I really love the flavor of this set. Next up, a card that went from cycling that was not so great to one that is actually pretty good. Neutralize. 1 blue counter target spell. And it has cycling for 2. It's cancel with upside. Will control decks run this? Maybe. I definitely think Mono Blue Control is definitely going to try this out, or Simic Flash will try this out. But I do think it is one of those cards where it is still cancel with upside, and there are some lists that don't play cancel with upside. There's some lists that do. You know if you play it or not. Does it have a chance to see standard play? Yes, mostly just because of the cycling aspect of this card, because when you don't need a counter spell, you can draw a card, and control lists do love the card draw to help draw into more control magic they need, so yeah, it has a chance. Next up, I think one of my favorite Mythos arts, and also one of my favorite Mythos cards, the Mythos of Nephloi. Nephloi? I am probably butchering these pronunciations. It is 2 and a black for a instant spell that says, destroy target non-land permanent. If it's a creature, or if green-white was spent to cast a spell. So the wording on this is a little weird, but here's what it's pretty much saying. It's saying that if you spend 2 and a black and you don't spin the green-white, you only can use this to destroy... Pretty much, you can only destroy a creature. However, if you do spend Absent on this spell, you can destroy any target non-land permanent. This can destroy planeswalkers. This can destroy enchantments. This can destroy creatures. It can destroy artifacts. So it's a very versatile spell. Granted, Assassin's Trophy is still in the meta, but this one is better because you don't have to worry about giving your opponents ramp. So yeah, Absent is just looking really more better the more I see it, because this is a very powerful card. Absent commander players or 5-color commander players are definitely going to play this because just the versatility of this. Because still, a free mana instant destroy an annoying creature. People play that. People play murder. And then this is versatile because it is just 1 black, so it can be splashed. So, yeah, and then if you meet the Absent requirement with the spell, the fact that it can destroy any target non-land permanent at instant speed, this card's good. It's going to see some play. Whether or not how you're going to distribute this between, like, Murderous Rider and this card, it really depends on your overall deck design and such, and whether or not you're going multicolor or not. I do feel like you do want to go multicolored to take advantage of the fact that this could be a free mana kill any non-land permanent on the battlefield. It's good. It's a really, really good card. It's going to see standard play. I would be dumbfounded if it didn't see standard play. Next up, the Proud Wild Bonder. A 4-mana hybrid of Gruul, so red, green, for a fur-free with Trample, and then it also has creatures you control with Trample have. You may have this creature assign its combat damage that still weren't blocked. Yeah, you probably haven't seen this because of the light glare, but this is probably my eyes bulging. Because, yeah, this card is scary. We know how I'm saying that Shadow Spirit might be a more relevant card in the meta coming up? Wink, wink, point, point. There's stuff like this. There's also a lot of really good, powerful trample creatures already in the meta. There's also ways that we can give creatures trample that we have seen already in the set. And the fact that you can then make this to just essentially say, hey, if I'm going to get lethal damage in, I would rather deal the lethal damage in than have the damage be blocked. This could just be used as a finisher. So, oh, and also it has a hybrid mana, so you can use it for devotion-based decks. So, yeah, this is to me a 5-star card. I think Gruul Aggro is going to play this card day one, just because they have a lot of trample creatures already within their deck design. They're already going to have ways upcoming from the set to enable trample. And the fact that this essentially helps enable that, even that token generator card that, depending on how much damage you deal to the player, you can create a bigger token and such. This is a good enabler for that archetype and such. I definitely can see many people are going to try to draft this archetype because it does look like a very powerful draft archetype. So, yeah. Card's good. Card is fantastic. Plus, seriously, that is the cutest little monster on that guy's shoulder. That is so gosh darn cute. You can't tell me that's not cute. Plus, also, if you haven't seen yesterday's spoil, they do actually have a spell called All Grown Up, where it's this little guy actually all grown up and such, and then the guy's on the shoulder of the monster, and it's just like, you gotta love the sequential storytelling they do on the cards sometimes. That's a little me going off side topic there, but that kind of shows how much I kind of like that. So anyway, next up, we're going to talk about, well, a Japanese or it's a Korean. I really have a hard time reading this, but let's go to the translation. The goofy translation they give it is the knock block. 1 and a white for an instant spell. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If it's blocking, instead put 2+1/+1 counters on it. Decent combat trick, actually, in limited. I would say that, because just 2 mana instant, give a creature a toughness and power boost, you play that. And then if it's blocking, instead then it becomes permanent status boost. That's pretty good. I think for limited, it's definitely going to be a card you want to keep your eye out. You gotta have to keep this in mind when playing against limited. If somebody has 2 white mana up and you attack it, you do have to keep this card in mind as a potential. So, yeah. Plus, also, Proliferate still a mechanic within Standard, so it might have a very slim chance of seeing Standard play, but I doubt that. But I still like this card for limited. And then also, if you don't need this effect, you can cycle. And like I said before, cycling is just a really good ability on cards. Next up, a card that every modern player has been talking about, Call of the Death Dweller. 2 and a black for a sorcery spell. Return up to 2 target creature cards with total converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a Death Touch counter on either of them, then put a Menace counter on either of them. Yeah, this card's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, this is a really decent, since a lot of majority spells are in kind of like, let's say, the Gagari mill or even in Dimir mill, want to essentially mill cards pretty quick. They will always mill on turn 1, they will always mill on turn 2, and if they can get 2 creatures in the graveyard by then, you can just play this on turn 3, return a couple of those creatures, which then could also work as more enablers for the milling archetype. Then, oh, by the way, you're going to give them a Death Touch or a Menace counter. Oh, wait. You can put a Death Touch on Mayhem Devil. That's so stupid. And we have the cycling way of giving Death Touch too, so... Oh, this set's going to be nuttier. I think people are going to mutate Mayhem Devil a lot in Standard. Now that you pointed that out, that's really nutty. But still, in Modern, the reason why a lot of people are talking about this in Modern is because, yet again, dredge decks and also just other decks that will benefit because this is kind of like a graveyard Coco, more or less. So, yeah. Yeah, this is going to be the Sack expansion set. And Jun Sack was already powerful enough thanks to Corval. But yeah, this card is really good. If you are a Reanimator deck, you're definitely going to want to play this card. If you're playing Sack, there's also really good incentive for this card. And boy, does Leyline of the Void look like a more better card the more I see this set. You might want to get your Leyline of the Voids for sideboard, everybody. Next up, I'm actually gonna show the really cool art of this, but there's also regular art of Glowstone Recluse. 2 and a green for a 2 free spider with reach. And it has mutate for 3 and a green, so it's big, but you are giving it reach, so you gotta keep that in mind. And also, whenever this creature mutates, put 2+1/+1 counters on it. So, yeah, pretty good card. Just the fact that this can get any creature reach. And as far as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure you can... I don't think you can mutate... Well, okay, there is a way you can mutate a flash speed, but mostly that's because you have to have actually the free cost Vivian to do that, I believe. But if you can do this at flash speed, then it's pretty absurd. Like, being able to get 2 permanent +1/+1 counters on it and give a creature reach is pretty nice. But even just putting it on a lot of good creatures in the format, I could see this as a potential tech card. Actually, since we're talking about Vivian, we could also talk about the 4-cost Vivian from the core set, and the fact of how a majority of these mutate cards do have kind of like side tech applications, and you could actually use Vivian to tutor them out, then the mutate on one of your powerful mainboard creatures, so that's a fun jank brew for Thoth to keep in mind, so yeah. I like this card, at least for limited, without a sweat. In standard, it has a chance. It has a chance. That too, like if you put it on a counters matter creature, it also is really good too. So who knows? Maybe we can make mutate Simic Ascendancy a thing. That's a fun food for thought. That is actually a really fun food for thought. Anyway, moving on. This is the regular art of Glowstone Recluse, but actually now moving on. We go to Leon Indestructible, which is an instant spell, but also... Like I said, Scryfall always likes to do these jokey names when they don't know the official translation. Learning social distancing, seriously. I'm almost wondering if April did this. Anyway, it's 4 and a black for... Oh no, it's not instant, it's a sorcery spell. And it has return target card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a lifelink counter on it. Not bad. A 5-mana Reanimator spell is slow, but we don't mind it. Like, we do have spells that do that. And the fact that this comes back with a lifelink counter on it, so you can pretty much make some really powerful creatures, like, I don't know, like that big Colossus we've been talking about, the giant, like, oh, how big was that Convoke Colossus from Guilds of Ravnica? The fact that you can return that back with a lifelink counter, or even like a Questing Beast with a lifelink counter and such, so it has a chance to see some play. It might be too high cost though, but I do like it. I do like it for as it is. And if you have lifelink synergies, like, well, you can maybe do this, or maybe at worst you can use this to return a Johnny's Pridemate and make it have lifelink permanently, and then also just have the +1 counter effect. So, a little high cost, but it's a food for thought. Next up, we are going to go to the trumpeting Yarr! That's kind of like what I want to do when I see this art. It's like, Yarr! Anyway, it's 1 green and a blue for a creature beast with a free, and has mutate for 5, which is a lot, but the mutate effect is basically the main reason for that. Which is, whenever this creature mutates, create a free green beast creature token. So, another incentive to do the mutate shenanigans deck. The fact that this could be used as a constant token generator is very nice. Definitely can see this in limited. Constructed, I'm almost tempted to put this in banned with Divine Visitation. Maybe. But still, it's not a bad card. And still, a free mana free is fine. Still, You're mostly playing it for the mutate effect, though, because the mutate effect is pretty nice. And also, here's the regular art from Aaron Miller, which the regular art also is really gorgeous as well. Next up, we get to a new legendary that pretty much I had to talk to the person I knew who played Catfish Tribal when I showed them this first time. Chevel, I believe is the pronunciation, or Chevel, Bane of Monsters. Green and a black for a legendary creature, human rogue with Death Touch. It's a 1/3, and it has at the beginning of your upkeep, if your opponent controls no permanents, keep that in mind, with bounty counters on them, put a bounty counter on target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Oh wait, so you can't target lands. Okay, never mind. But still, you can put a bounty counter on target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls, and well, I guess you could target a man land when it becomes if someone decides to do it during your upkeep for some random reason. Anyway, whenever a permanent an opponent controls with a bounty counter on it dies, you gain free life and draw a card. It has potential. This is one of those cards where I'm totally 50-50 on it, because this card is either really good or not so good. And the reason why I think this card could be decent is because the thing is, a majority of people who play the removal spells, they play it by turn 3, turn 4, and such. So the fact that you can on curve play this, then put something on a permanent that you don't mind, like a planeswalker and such, and then remove that planeswalker to get the card draw effect, that's pretty good. And the factor is, even if the opponent bounces it, that bounty counter is still on there. So then still when you recast this and then recast your removal, then you can, or cast your removal, you will still get the life card draw effect from it. It's a food for thought, I will admit for that. I do think it has a chance of being a really standard viable card, but it is kind of one of those where it's like, I'm 50-50 on it, and the only reason why I'm 50-50 on it is because Teferi is a card in the meta. That's really my main reason. But against other archetypes, still, it has the potential to be good. Plus, the Death Touch aspect on it is really nice, and we do play stuff like the Orzhov Bodyguard and such, which is like the 2-cost Death Touch dude that does the Afterlife trigger, so this is more beneficial since it gets you additional card draw, so maybe. That is an absolute maybe on that one. I'm really 50-50. This card is either absolutely bonkers, or the card is just okay. Next up, we're going to go to Scroton Titani, which then their translation is Round 2, Fight! 5 mana for an instant spell. Target creature fights another target creature, which means each creature deals damage equal to its power to others. Good for sealed limited, bad for everything else. Because, here's the thing. It might be a lot more better in this limited format, because the factor is we are going to have a lot of big creatures and such. So the factor that this can be used to get like a bigger creature to remove a smaller creature can be nice. Or if your opponent has Death Touch and such, then they fight, it kills the Death Touch creature and then kills the other creature. Like, there are really cute ways you can play around with this card. But I do think it's a little too high cost, and I do think the effect we've seen effects like this where a creature fights another creature and such, and unless they're like really cheap, they don't really see that much play. Who knows? I could be wrong, but I think this card is a little bit too high cost for even what it does. Though I will admit has to be high cost because that effect can potentially be pretty powerful in the right board states. But the key word is right board states. There are some board states where this card is just going to be a dead card in your hand, and if this card doesn't have cycling, so then it's more of a dead card in your hand. So, yeah. Next up, hey, more incentive to do the Abzan shenanigans. Death's Oasis. Abzan for an enchantment that has, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then return a creature card with lesser converted mana cost than the creature that died from your graveyard to your hand. And then 1, sacrifice this enchantment. You gain life equal to the greatest converted mana cost among creatures you control. Oh boy, this is a nutty commander card. it's a really nutty commander card in the right decks. Like, there's some absent sack decks that are going to love this card. They are going to love this. Is going to be an auto include. They're going to pick up the foils like that because all those abilities are relevant. One, it self mills itself. That is really good. Two, it allows you to return a card from your graveyard to your hand. That's also really good, especially if you have like incremental ETB triggers and such, or maybe even powerful. Even if it does lesser creatures, that is still cards that can be sack outlets if you don't mind sacking and such. Yeah, pretty much. The legendary tiger are made to be together with this card. Or is it the legendary cat? And even then, this card also be used to save yourself. Like if you're gonna almost get dealt lethal burn damage, you can just spend 1 mana, sack this, gain life with your highest. And keep in mind, it's you with the greatest converted cost on creatures control, so it is creatures, not permanents, creatures. But that still can be pretty nutty, especially in the right deck, because the majority of the reanimator / sacrifice kind of like outlet decks are going to have creature cards with high converted mana costs. I would be dumbfounded if they didn't. So yeah, this card is really good. Definitely Commander All-Star. It has a really slim chance of seeing standard play because of the sacrifice decks and such, so and Absent is definitely being incentivized to do kind of like the graveyard shenanigans. Still, it is still technically a free cost enchantment that is relatively slow. And no, you can't be cute with this and do kind of like the cat combo with this card because, as at least currently of the spoiler, we don't have any 0 converted mana cost cards that are creatures. At least that I'm aware of. Next up, we're going to talk about the Archipelago. Okay, I am going to butcher this name. Archipelago, I believe is how you pronounce it. It is a 7/7 Leviathan, but you can mutate it for 6. Oh, and whenever this creature mutates, tap up to 2 Ets target creatures, where Ets is the number of times this creature has mutated. Those creatures don't untap during their control's untap step. Cool. And it's really nice but limited. I do think it's too slow for Constructed, though. Because we have a lot of tap creature down frozen effects still in standard. Like we had like the Queen of Ice and such, and that still didn't really see much play. Mostly because while there is some creature-oriented stuff, a majority of decks are kind of like either very powerful creatures that have activated abilities, Mayhem Devil, etc., or stuff where they are not going to be really creature-oriented. And this is still the weird aspect of this card where it's the Ets Mutate, Ets Times shenanigans. And I'm always finicky on this cycle of cards because I do feel like the minute you try to mutate this additional times, it's going to get removed. So, yeah, who knows? Maybe. This one is a really slim maybe, but I highly doubt it. Decent limited card, though. I will say it's a really decent limited card. Next up, the General's Enforcer. Speaking of more Orzhov human shenanigans, white and a black for a creature human soldier, legendary humans you control have indestructible. And 2 white and a black, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, create a +1/+1 white human soldier creature token. This is really good. Like, you gotta look, and we are getting a lot of legendary humans in the set. We already seen the human tribal lord. We have seen, like, even some. We have Tomic still in the meta. There is some really nice legendary humans when you look close enough. And the fact that we can use this card to essentially make sure that those cards have indestructible, very nice. However, we do have exile cards in the meta, so the card does get a little bit poopy when you think about it that way, especially since we have a lot of like Banishing Light. That was the name of the card. We do have stuff like Banishing Light in the format, but the fact that this helps against a lot of board wipe shenanigans, especially like stuff like Shadow the Sky and such. Actually, against Shadow the Sky, that actually is... The factor that you have this down, you have your legendary humans, which are going to like, and the factor then you Shadow the Sky, you're... Granted, this will die because it's not legendary, but your other legendary humans that you would not mind surviving will survive, so... That's a good food for thought. But even then, still that, and also the activated ability as a mana sink is really nice. So actually getting an additional human, which in this human tribal deck they're encouraging, it's going to be very significant. So if the humans deck is a thing, and they play a lot of legendary humans, they're going to probably give this a shot. But mostly I think it's more a commander card. I don't know. Would modern humans try this card out? Somebody in the comments who play modern might tell me that or such. I don't know how many legendary humans they play other than like Thalia and such. Next up, we're going to go to the Auspicious Asteroids. 4 and a green for a sit-sits with mutative sits, so a lot more for the mutate, but whenever this creature mutates, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile its permanent cards, where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. Put those permanent cards onto the battlefield. Okay, I know I've been giving kind of a kind of really negative criticism to all this X-Cycle cards. If there is one X-Cycle card where I'm going to give the exception to the rule, it's this card. Because this card is kind of absurd when you think about it. Now, let's be frank, a majority of the times when you mutate, it's just probably going to get a land. But still, just getting a mutate and get a land, it's not bad. But the fact that the versatility of this is kind of like has a Chaos Warp effect that you can get a lot of permanents onto the battlefield. You can get Planeswalkers from this effect. You can get powerful enchantment. You can get a lot of fiends with that mutate effect. So I think this has a chance, especially since green is a very good ramp color at the moment. This has a really good chance of seeing play because at worst, it is just a 6 mana. When you do the mutate, you're going to get a land from the top of your library, which you don't mind that much, or you're going to get your best card, or not, well, okay, maybe I'm doing best case mentality there, but you're going to still get a permanent, and sometimes it's going to be a land, sometimes it's going to be a bomb. So I like this card. This is probably the rare exception of X cards that I actually like a lot, because it can get pretty silly pretty quick, especially with how cheap mutate can be. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole cycle, but I'm just going to show off the absent one to pretty much say this. Pretty much any of the cons colored, there's a cycle of this, of the crystals. Like, for example, the Indafa crystal. So it's essentially a free mana rock that can tap for any of the colors of its specific wedge, but you can also cycle it for 2. I remember showing this and I was like, yep, this is a card that Maciel will want to see, and Maciel had some fun seeing these cards, so it's nice to see that he had some fun with looking at these cards. Do these have a chance to see standard play? Maybe. I mean, the factor is, later down the line, they can be used as mana rocks, but then even if you don't need the mana, you can use it as card draw. Very nice. We also have ways to bring like permanent cards from our graveyard to our hand, stuff with Tameo and such if we need it. So yeah, it has a chance to see some standard play. But mostly, if we're being quite frankly honest, the main reason why these cards are here is just for Commander. Yes, there is better mana rocks in Commander. I know. But this could be a really good budget mana rock for some decks and such. And the fact that it has cycling, it's really nice. So, but yeah, the cycling aspect is what makes these cards really good. So overall, I like this cycle a lot. I mean, it's not broken, and I don't really want a broken cycle of mana rocks if I'm being honest, but these actually will have some potential good versatility in Commander in the right decks. So I like them. I like them actually a lot. Next up, oh boy, another really good card. Unlike Arena, these ones work on Arena though. True, unless you're playing Brawl, of course. Okay, next up is Blood Curdle. 3 and a black for an instant spell. Destroy target creature. Put a menace counter on a creature you control. Well, this card's good for limited. This is definitely your limited kill spell, and it has upside. It kills a creature that you want to be killed, and then when you do that, you then essentially give probably your bomb a menace counter, or one of your creatures, make them have menace. This is good. This is a really good card for limited. Like, this is I'm almost tempted to say this is a pack 1 pick 1 unless you have a bomb within your packs. Because never underestimate unconditional removal, especially when the unconditional removal gives your board state upside. Also, Yep, giving Menace to anything with Death Touch and Trample is hilarious. So yeah, card's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. It might even have some chance for standard play, maybe because the Menace ability on like a questing beast is kind of absurd. It's definitely going to be a fun card to brew around and such as kind of like a limit as removal spell, maybe as a 2 of or 1 of in your decks. Just especially if you are a creature oriented deck design, maybe that's the best way to look at this. If you're a creature oriented deck design and you want your creatures to get more scarier, sort of semi pun intended, then you might play Blood Curdle. But still, 4 mana is costly though, especially since we have a lot of free cost removal in the set. Next up, Shredded Sails. 1 in a red for an instant. Choose 1. Destroy target artifact, or it deals 4 damage to target creature with flying, and it has cycling too. Yeah, I like this card. It's a sideboard tech potentially, but honestly, it's just a really decent tech card. It also has cycling, which then makes it really decent. Just the fact that it can destroy a lot of flyers is nice, or destroy a really problematic artifact, which I do think is something to consider for at least limited at the very least, since I think a lot of people are going to be trying to play like those mana rocks that they can, or any like powerful, like the fact that we got that whole common mana rock cycle. Is it common? Let me check real quick. I believe it's common. Oh no, it's uncommon. But still, the fact that people are going to find ways to ramp, and that is going to be a way for people to ramp. So this might just be a good tech card for limited. In constructed, maybe the sideboard, especially if you see a really problematic flying creature or problematic artifact. But honestly, it's more limited card with some fringe applications for constructed. Next up, I gotta look at the translation for this one. It is, as they call it, a harmless houseplant. It's 1 in a green for an instant with cycling, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So it is destroy. It's not as good as the exile effect, which is not great, but still good card for limited and such, especially if you see a really problematic enchantment or artifact. And the cycling ability on this is nice. So overall, decent limited card, fringe application in sideboards and standard. Oh, and I want to show this off. This is the alternate art for the buy-up bundle, like the bundle that you can usually get. This is the promo art for that, of the big aura. I just kind of like this art because just the creature on that is so intimidating. Oh, don't get me wrong. Disenchant it green with cycling is nice. Don't get me wrong. But we do have naturalized, so it's naturalized with cycling and such. But also I like the flavor text. Talk later. Row now. As you can see, they're rowing against this giant, humongous thingy. And I think that is all the cards that have been spoiled from at least on Scryfall on day 2. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this take on my shenanigans on this day 2 of spoilers. I've been liking the set so far. I really want to try this out. It's not going to be the end of the stream yet. I'll talk to people at the stream, but it will be the end of the recorded video. Nevertheless, I hope everybody has a good day. This is LevDev signing out. Bye.